Hello, it's me. I'm just wondering how everybody's doing. It's a bit of a long stretch. Well, here in the UK we have Boxing Day, which is the second kind of holiday. So I guess in other parts, I think maybe Australia have Boxing Day as well. Well, if you haven't met me before, my name's Sunday. This is me. For some strange reason, a number of years ago I set this group up, and it seems to have limped and lurched and hobbled to where it's at now. I'm from England, if you haven't met me before. My glasses aren't going to stay on my head because I've got these slidey things in. So I've had an okay Christmas. I've now had 20 Christmases of it being different since I left the dad. In fact, it's probably more. 2003, and it was very sticky since 2000, really, the relationship at home. And yeah, so 20 odd years of having Christmases that were very different, not family Christmases anymore. And so there's been a whole mixed feelings each year. Some years I've like been on my own, some years I've been with one person or another, but just recently, the last few, it's got a bit more stable with me and Stephen, my husband, not their dad, celebrating together. And yeah, just recently you will have perhaps read the post about me going and spending time with one of my siblings' family, one of my sisters. And my relationship with my siblings like blew out the water 15 years ago because of, maybe longer, because of what my daughters chose to do. So anyway, I'm wondering how your Christmas went, and whether you've kept your head up above water, or whether you've actually been swimming in style with it all. It's a strange time, isn't it? And it comes every year, and it's really commercialised, and, you know, like we're supposed to, there's a lot of expectations, I think, and a lot of hidden, within families when we get together, there's a lot of hidden history, resentments, protection, all that kind of stuff. It's really interesting. If you can stand back from estrangement itself, you can really see that the family is under, some people might say it's under threat. I think it's under investigation. That's the way I like to look at it anyway. Because nobody knows how to get families to work optimally, you know. I mean, hell, it's hard enough to get your own life to work optimally in your own being, let alone with anybody else, and let alone with a number of people, all with different personalities and different belief systems, and all trying the best to muddle along and accommodate each other's differences. And maybe some people are really judgmental and fearful and critical, and as a result of their own family upbringing, who knows? And then you get these people coming in who marry into the family, and oh dear me. I think there's still a lot of toleration that goes on. And last year I learned a lovely word, which was the accommodation word. You know, it's like I didn't want to tolerate things anymore. I'm sure I still do. Unconsciously, I'm sure I still tolerate some things that are intolerable. And a resentment is a really good tool for me to notice where I'm going into that resentment, into that toleration. But I much prefer the word accommodation, because if I'm moving away from tolerating, which means that some things are intolerable, you know, they're not things that I'm willing to have around me or accept or pretend to accept, which is toleration. You know, if I can accommodate, I will, and if I can't accommodate, then I'm out of there. You know, it's like I'm too old now to not do the things in my life that work for me. You know, in the past I would have put up and shut up and tolerated and bend my will to being reasonably okay with doing something that perhaps I didn't want to do. And now, with the self-love stuff that I facilitate and host in the groups that I hold, I'm learning to not do that. Because I don't do anybody, I do everybody a disservice if I tolerate. I mean, it's when you think about it, if you agree with a friend to go somewhere and then you have this resentment towards this friend because you didn't really want to go, but you kind of did it for them, but then you're resentful about it, that's not a gift, that's not being true, that's actually holding resentment against somebody who thinks you're all right with doing what they asked. And then you're having a bad time in your head about them. You know, they get to cop for the negative thoughts that I'm feeling, you know, and I don't want to do that to somebody. I'd rather say, and have the discomfort of saying, no, that isn't something I want to do, or that's not going to work for me, or... And yet, you know, I see that my need to be liked, included, has been severely tested through estrangement, you know, hanging on to people who perhaps I wouldn't have done it out of my insecurity that I went through being estranged. And I'm moving out of that now, slowly but surely. I think, well, you know, if they don't like me because I say no, or no thank you, or this isn't going to work for me, or etc., and they choose not to like me anymore, then really that has to be okay. And it's not always, and yet it has to be, because compromising myself for somebody else's favour or approval or being liked isn't the way that I want to do my relationships. It just isn't. And when I talk about it in that way, it does make sense, and yet when I'm at the pointy edge and the sharp edge of having to make that decision of not of saying no, it's not easy. It's not always easy. So, you know, it's an ongoing learning, it's an ongoing inquiry, explore, if that's where you're at. You know, and if you're right, if this has been your first Christmas without your adult son or daughter in your life, I take my hat off to you, because that's a tough gig, especially if you're the only one. You know, I know that some adult sons and daughters, they choose to estrange themselves from the whole of the family. Mine wasn't like that. Mine is like, it's the mother that we're not talking to. And I found that to be incredibly hard. I often wondered what it would be like if you were part of a small number of you who were experiencing it together. I know that we do have families in here who've been completely cut off, but I also know that there's some single parents, mothers, fathers who are in here who have been solely cut off. I have no experience of the other side, you know, the other experience of that, so I can't really comment. I just know that for me to be cut off singly, solely, was really hard, because all my siblings were still in their lives, and of course I was making up stories around how one of my sisters was kind of being the surrogate mother to my adult daughters at that time. I don't know if that's strictly true, but it felt like it at the time. It's amazing, these stories that we create to fill in the gaps of the information that we've got. And that's something that I'd encourage you to take care of yourself around, is like noticing the stories that you tell yourself to fill in the gaps. A lot of people feel punished by estrangement. You know, they feel like their children are punishing them. And whilst that might be true, it's not a particularly useful belief to carry, because it makes you into a child, really, being parented, reprimanded by your adult son and daughter. And if there's anything that you're not, you know, it's like our adult son and daughters aren't in a position to reprimand their parents. It's just against the kind of nature of things. I'm just thinking now of a lovely film that I watched last night on Netflix, which was called Goodbye Jane, or I don't know, it was a lady's name. I might see if I can find a link and pop it in under here. And it was some famous actresses, British actresses, Kate Winslet and Helen Mirren, and they were playing a daughter and mother. It was a lovely film. It had a little bit of everything in it, and she was dying, was the mum, and she had these 4 children, and they all had their stuff with each other and themselves. If you get a chance to watch it, make sure you take some tissue. It's a good clearing out emotional crying. It's a good way of getting rid of some of the tears that you might struggle to shed at some time. And that's another thing, you know, this emotional thing that, it's a bereavement that we're experiencing. You know, even me, 20 years down the line, you know, it's still, there's a grief in there. And people will say things and it'll stir my feelings in some way. And I was really proud of myself yesterday for mixing with my sister's children and their partners and their children and even their children's children. There were babies there, and I was looking around thinking, this could have been me, this my sister, this could have been me with my extended family. You know, there were 21 people in the room, and my sister and her husband, the head of that family, you know, the oldest there. And I was putting myself in my sister's place thinking, yes, but I haven't got a big house like you have, couldn't accommodate, you know, and all those kind of things. And I was thinking how different my life has been to hers. And I think the biggest factor in the way that my life's unfolded is divorcing my children's father. And the ripples of that, we never came back from that, really. There's other stuff, of course, and yet I think that that's probably the biggest defining factor. If I'd have stayed with their dad, it would have been different. And I possibly would have not been able to accommodate, not been able to tolerate, would have felt resentment. And I can't speak for my other siblings, and yet I can see that, well, maybe no relationship's perfect, and yet there are some that are a little bit more, I can accommodate myself in some much more easily than I can in others. I think looking back, you know, I don't know whether if you've separated from your children's father, or if you've separated from your children's mother, if you're a dad watching, you are outnumbered, you dads in here. Unbelievably so. I don't know what the percentage is. I haven't looked for a long time, but there are some more men coming in here. Anyway, I don't know whether you feel that by leaving the other parent of your children, whether that was a defining factor in the estrangement that you experienced. And I don't know whether you look back to see why you left that person. I still love, I'm not in love, and I still love my former husband, who I was married to for 20 years. And the reason why I left him was that I felt that I couldn't be me and do what I wanted to do with my life in that relationship. There was too much control, too much criticism of me, wanting to flourish into my next adventures. You know, I've been a mum. I still was a mum. I thought I could have my cake and eat it and have a career and be a mother. It seemed that everybody had got conditioned to be me being at home and being the one that did all the organising, all the family stuff, all the kin and kith caring, you know. And when I became busier outside of the home, that's when it all became very difficult. And I can hold my hand up and say, you know, I didn't do it great, because I was kind of fighting for my survival. It felt like that looking back. I didn't know at the time. And yet that feels like I was trying to realise that I had more inside of me to offer than simply being at home, looking after people, which I thought I did a reasonable job. Not the best job, you know, there's so many gaps in when I look back. I think some of the things that I wished I'd done better, had I known to do better then, I wished I'd been slower, I wished I'd been less rushed, I wish that I'd paid attention more, that I'd been present more, probably is the right word. Yeah, I was trying to squeeze too much in, you know, maybe that's been your story too. I certainly didn't feel fulfilled, and I kind of was looking to see what would support me to feel fulfilled. I feel fulfilled now. I feel like I'm offering something that the world very much needs, which is a space to explore family, relationships, estrangement, communication, grief, self-love. Those are the things that I'm really interested in. How to have great relationships with people. God, doesn't the world need that? We need to be able to communicate and process feelings. That's another thing I'm interested in, how people process their feelings. Yeah, the family patterns that perhaps you might recognise, that you can see. As you get older, you can see so much more, can't you? There's a wisdom in being an elder that I think is not really honoured, perhaps even in ourselves. You know, it takes courage to actually say, hang on a minute. Have you really considered what that might look like, feel like, sound like? And what might be the final outcome of that? So if you are like me, feel like you've got a voice, it can be very, you might have seen on this recent, if you're a friend of mine, you might have seen that reel that I did on Substack, and then I put a clip on my public Facebook page, and the amount of stuff that's going on in there. And it isn't easy. Put your head above the parapet and, you know, be the tall poppy syndrome, whatever. You know, like, if you're noticeable, and I wasn't called Gobby Gilchrist at school for nothing. You know, I've always been able to talk. Well, not always. There was a time when I hid away, after being estranged, where I thought, where have I gone? Who am I now? And where did Sunday that I know and love, where's she gone? I was really worried that I'd never come back. So if you feel that, I had such an identity crisis when you get estranged. Well, it was for me. Maybe for you too, that you feel like, who am I now? You know, what do I want to do when I grow up? And how do I get over this immense, huge loss in my life? We do it really well. I can't tell you how well we do to just even function with this loss. And I'm sure at some level our sons and daughters are the same, you know, pulling away. I'm sure for some it's easier than others, but for some, I would say majority of them, they really struggle to stay away. That's why a lot of them keep coming back and being, you know, making odd connections of various kinds. And I always say, where there's a connection, there's always a want for it to be different. And yet our nervous systems like go, no, it's too dangerous, too emotionally dangerous for many of us to get back in to communication. So that's a big piece of work, is like
stabilizing my own nervous system. And each step that I do with family, with people who kind of epitomise and present themselves in the way that I find difficult and triggering, the more that I kind of expose myself, learn how to communicate with those kind of people, the more I'm rewiring my nervous system, which was put in place by my dad many moons ago, and I'm grateful for that now, because I've evolved through trauma, through violence of varying degrees, bullying, unkind communication. You know, that's been my route. And the other side of that is peace, love and harmony in myself, with other people, even with difficult people, even with people who would like to, for me to, who would try, I think, to depersonalise me, to, what is that? There's a word and I can't remember it. Dehumanise me, make me less than. You know, it's an interesting time that we're living in, because that is going on globally. So many people not seeing the sacredness, the gloriousness of a human being, which we all are. Whew. So we've got a new year coming, another one. And it'll be interesting to see how 2026 unfolds and what we create. Yeah, thank you for being in here. Thank you for being in this. It feels to me a little bit like a haven. I know there's plenty of, there are one or two other estrangement groups that I feel a little bit safer, in want of another word, than others. You know, a place to come and be, a place to come and share, knowing that I might give you a little bit of a nudge of feedback in some way. But by and large, people are kind. There's no laughter emojis going on, passive aggressiveness. I think that's what I like to think, that together we're cultivating, is a place that feels like a community, where we do feel included and safe, and yet at the same time we're still willing to explore, to go to that edge of discomfort that's not always easy, and hang out in that. That's where we grow, on that discomfort edge. Staying in our comfort zone is just going to keep us holed up into the same, and it's not really comfortable in there anyway. It's what we're used to, it's what we can tolerate, and back to tolerating again. So the growth is on that discomfort edge, on the edge where you think, I don't want to know that, I don't want to go there, I don't want to look at that. That's where the growth is. And who knows what magic we might create in this next coming year. And if you've had a little bit of connection with your son or daughter, how will you foster that, and will you keep it slow and steady? Everybody's nervous system's jangly. If you think how long maybe it took for them to leave, or to try and leave, or maybe it was sudden, I don't know. But I think for most of us, I think it's been a downward slope to being estranged. It has to be a slow, steady grind. Maybe that's the right word, grind. Up the hill, back into communication. It won't ever be the same as it was, but then you wouldn't expect it to be, would you? It's how can you get to trust yourself, to know that whatever comes your way, you can handle it. Even if they were to leave again. I had that experience a couple of years ago. Somebody came back, made some overtures, we had some conversations, and then she went again. It wasn't as painful. In fact, it
was all right, really, because I got to see something about her, you know, her level of work that she's got to do before she can come back and engage with me like an adult. She wants a mummy back. Don't we all want a mummy? Don't we all think, oh, I wished I'd had that from my mother? You know, looking at other people's mothers. It's messy. But through all that mess, there is a potential. You only have to look into nature and see that it's messy. And the potential comes out of the mess. Anyway, I could rattle on. I'm feeling myself leaning into conflict now. Conflict is the birthplace of creativity. You know, let that rattle around for a bit, because when I first heard that, I thought, and thoughts and feelings aren't real. Let that rattle around a bit too. What does that mean? Anyway, lots of love to you, and I'll see you again soon. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Bye.